everybody. Welcome to 2 Minutes and Beyond, the podcast where we review the Toy Story movies 2 minutes at a time. I'm Macy, and this is Bianca.
Howdy, how's it going?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm fantastic now that I got water.
So in this episode, we're going to be talking about minutes 1 and 2 of the first Toy Story movie. We're finally getting into the actual movie instead of just talking about ourselves.
I'm very excited. I mean, I know minute 1, half of it, if not more than half of it, is just the Disney logo, but I'm excited that we're finally starting this.
Yes. Don't worry, though. I've got a lot to say about the Disney logo and the Pixar logo. I'm not joking. Before we get started, though, we wanted to mention a couple of other podcasts. One is the podcast Toy Story Minute, which is very similar in concept to this podcast. We did not realize that it existed until a month or two ago, and I decided to search and see if there were any other Toy Story podcasts. They review the Toy Story movies 1 minute at a time, and we just wanted to say, one, we're not trying to copy them at all or compete with them. From what little we've both listened to, it seems to be a pretty good show. And if you want more Toy Story podcasts, go check them out.
I feel like we should put their link in the little notes section so that people can check them out, because the few episodes that I heard were pretty good and I did enjoy it. And I think other people, if they want more information besides what we're giving them, that would be a good resource material for them.
Yes. Plus, we figured there's enough room out there for 2 podcasts going a crazy amount into detail on the Toy Story movies, and we're kind of
Who
doing a
doesn't
different
like details.
And we're kind of doing a little bit of a different thing anyway, since we're doing 2 minutes instead of just 1, and we're giving our own opinions.
And I really think that's something that people like watching, especially if you see on YouTube how everybody does different reviews of the same thing. It's not like you're going to be like, oh, I can't do it because somebody else has already done it. I mean, a lot of people do a review for the same thing, so I really don't see a problem with it.
Yes. So go check out Toy Story Minute. And the second podcast I wanted to mention was the podcast that inspired the idea for this podcast, and that is Moving Right Along by Ryan and Anthony from the Muppet fan site Tough Pigs. And in that podcast, they review the Muppet movies 2 minutes at a time, and that is one of my absolute favorite podcasts ever. And I got to thinking it would be fun to do a Toy Story podcast with a similar concept of reviewing it 2 minutes at a time. So shout out to Ryan and Anthony from that podcast.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We're finally living our dream.
Yes. So before we jump into the actual movie, I wanted to talk about some facts about this movie and a little bit about the box office numbers and awards that it's won, and just a little bit of the history behind this movie. Toy Story was originally released on November 22nd, 1995, according to Box Office Mojo and a different website called thenumbers.com. In its original release, Toy Story made $244,651,588. On its opening weekend, it was the number 1 at the box office, and it made $29,140,617 domestically. It was the number 3 top grossing movie of 1995 after Batman Forever and Apollo 13, and before Pocahontas, Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, and Casper. And I specifically wanted to mention Casper because a Casper doll was part of what inspired John Lasseter to make this a movie about toys in the first place, was his Casper doll that he had as a kid. So I thought that was interesting that the Toy Story movie came out around the same time as a Casper movie.
Well, that is really interesting. I really liked the movie Casper. I remember actually all of those movies. I was 5 watching Ace Ventura. That's probably not a good thing. Um, but I do remember seeing Casper, and I really liked that movie. Of course, Toy Story, when I was 5, I went to go see it, and that began the obsession. And, those were some good times. I really liked those movies. They don't make movies like that anymore.
So some sources list this movie as the number one. I think like if you Google like what was the top grossing movie of 1995, it'll say it was Toy Story, but that's only if you take into account all the money it's made in like re-releases. It
Okay.
was it was released uh re-released in 2009 and again in 2020, and including those releases, it's made $394,436,586 in total.
Dang, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, although I did look up the box office of Toy Story 4, and that was like over $1 billion.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
I didn't think it made that much money. Like for me, I'm not big on looking up how much money a movie grosses, but that's really interesting. That's like, I didn't realize how much money it actually brought in. That's crazy.
Yeah, especially for like the very first computer animated movie. Those numbers are really impressive.
Yeah, because they didn't even know how it was going to be, like if people would like it, if people would even be interested to go see something like that. That's really cool.
Yeah. So it was a big success financially. It was nominated for 4 Academy Awards for Best Original Screenplay, Best Original Musical or Comedy Score, Best Original Song for You've Got a Friend in Me, and then John Lasseter was nominated for a Special Achievement Award for it being the first computer animated film. And out of those 4, it only won Special Achievement,
Oh
which I
wow.
feel like, especially for a Best Original Song,
I was
Toy
gonna
Story
say
got snubbed.
they should have won that for sure because that song, You Got a Friend in Me, is one of my favorite songs. I have it on my Spotify favorites. Whenever it comes on at work, you better believe I'm raising the volume.
Yeah, I do think it's sad though that Randy Newman didn't win any Oscars for any of his Pixar songs until Monsters Inc.
Oh, I love the Monsters Inc. soundtrack. That's like one of my favorite soundtracks.
It's so good.
It is. Oh man. Well, I'm glad he won an Oscar for that because I would have gone knocking on some doors.
Yeah. But it was also nominated for 9 Annie Awards and won 8 out of the 9.
Oh,
And
nice.
this is unbelievable to me. But the one nomination that it lost was for Best Individual Achievement in Voice Acting for Tom Hanks.
Oh my gosh.
It won all the 8 other awards and lost for Tom Hanks.
I bet they feel pretty silly now not letting that one go through also because dang, that's kind of messed up, man.
I know. I'm like, how? I don't understand. I would like to know who won. In fact, I should have looked that up, but I didn't.
Maybe it's better we don't know.
It was added to the U.S. Library of Congress's National Film Registry in 2005. It placed 44 in the Hollywood Reporter's Hollywood's 100 Favorite Films poll. It placed 99 in Empire Magazine's survey of the 500 greatest movies. Placed 101 in IMDb's user-generated list of the best films ever made. Placed 95 in Rotten Tomatoes' list of the best reviewed films ever made. It is 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, and it has a score of 95 on Metacritic.
I would be mad if there was like any less percentages on those. I'd be like, man, who is not watching Toy Story, or who's just, is this Sid? Is Sid the one that downvoted it?
It's Sid or, like, I don't know, Zurg or
Someone. Al, you know, I wouldn't doubt it. Lotso.
Gabby.
Don't give them computers, man. Just keep all those electronics away from them because they're downvoting a really good movie.
I wanted to read a little bit about the history of this movie really briefly. I'm going to be reading a little bit from a book that I have called Toy Story: The Art and Making of the Animated Film, and it was released in 1995 along with the movie, and was written by, or put together by, John Lasseter and Steve Daly. And it's sort of the precursor to, like, those art of books that Pixar and Disney put
Oh
out
yeah.
now, except it's different. It's huge, and I don't mean it that it, like, has a lot of pages. I mean it's like 16 inches tall.
Oh my gosh, why is the book so big?
I don't know. Here, I can show it to you on our camera. I mean, listeners can't see it, but it's
That's a
pretty
large
big.
book.
Yeah. And it's got this really neat cover that has, like, I don't know what it's called, that, like, 3D effect where if you turn it a little
Okay, yeah,
bit,
like the
the image
little
looks,
holographic cards almost.
yeah, the image looks like it's moving.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah. And I think it's still pretty easy to find a used copy of it online if anyone would like to have a copy for themselves, because I know I'm going to be referring to this book quite a bit over the course of at least this season of the podcast. So on page 6, it says, "We were aiming to make a feature right from the beginning," says Pixar President Edwin Catmull, who, along with Lasseter, producer Ralph Guggenheim, supervising technical director Bill Reeves, and their team of graphics experts, left Lucasfilm and, together with Steve Jobs, formed Pixar in 1986. And a little later on, it says, "Around that time, Pixar began pursuing its dream in earnest. Walt Disney feature animation had started to expand into forms of animation beyond the traditional two-dimensional cell processes it had already perfected." And it goes on to talk about, like, the first part of that was when they worked with Tim Burton to create Nightmare Before Christmas using stop motion, and how in Beauty and the Beast they used computer animation uh, to create some of the backgrounds and animation in some scenes. And it goes on to say in another page, it says, "We at Disney, that is, know how to actually get this stuff put together in 75 minutes of film," says Thomas Schumacher, who was the feature animation senior vice president at Disney. He said, "We know how to track a movie, make a movie, look at it, edit it, cut sound effects, cut music, and review it. These are things Pixar had never done. In many ways, they didn't know what they didn't know because no one had ever done this before." So basically, Disney was there kind of guiding them along and teaching them how to actually make a movie.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need like a professional to not so much hold your hand, but lead you in the right direction. Because now look at Pixar. They're teams of like storyboard artists and the writers and everybody that puts the actual story together before the animation begins.
Mhm.
They do really good. I know a lot of people nowadays are like, "Oh, I wish, Pixar would go back to the old stories like Toy Story and the first Monsters Inc. and all of that." But I'm like, they're still doing really good. I like their movies that they're still making. They're not going down in quality. It's just, I think a lot of it has to play on the nostalgia factor. People
Mhm.
remember the movies when they were kids and they feel that they want that feeling again. But when you get older,
Mhm.
you kind of lose that feeling.
Yeah, and so part of this book, I won't or part of, what I have written down from the book, I won't read it, but essentially it was talking about how they had no idea, like, how do you even put together, like, a team to make a computer animated movie? How do you, like, figure out what you're doing along the way and, like, create a path to
Hmm.
having a completed film? So while they have Disney on one hand helping them in whatever ways they can with their experience in making movies, they're still also having to figure out this other aspect of it that no one else has ever done before.
Right. Especially since the whole computer animation thing was brand new. Nobody knew. There's no senior officer right now because this is just coming out. So you're just there kind of frantically looking for people saying, "Hey, you look like you're good at IT. Can you help us with our computer?"
Yeah, there were no like, this is the way you do this thing and this is the way you do this other thing. They were figuring it out all on their own.
I know, that's crazy. I would hate to have something start from the ground up and you're panicking trying to figure it out because everything that I've done, people already know, and I'm very thankful for that.
So, should we just jump in to talking about the actual 2-minute clip that we're planning to talk about?
Sure. Well, it's more like the 1 minute, 10-second clip because of the logos.
True. But speaking of the logos, the version of the Walt Disney Pictures logo that was originally used for Toy Story was actually a variant of the old white and blue Walt Disney Pictures logo that was used from 1990 to 2006. So, like, when you think of, like, watching those old, like, Disney VHS tapes
Yeah, and
or
it had
Disney
the blue
movies around
background
that
with the
time.
white logo,
Yeah, with the white castle logo that was, like, kind of segmented, and
striped.
then
Yes.
yeah, and then, like, the little, I guess, Tinkerbell that goes over the top.
That was my
I guess
favorite.
that's supposed to be Tinkerbell. It might just be a star, I don't know. And then it plays, like, When You Wish Upon a Star.
hmm Except for in the original Toy Story opening, they had their own little fanfare, which I miss terribly.
Yes, that's part of what I was gonna talk about. But the version of the logo that was used in the original version of Toy Story was actually a variant on that white and blue Walt Disney Pictures logo because the castle was 3D.
Oh,
And I totally never realized or thought about that
I never noticed that. When I was
despite
little, I
seeing
was
it.
just staring at the screen all excited.
Yeah, plus it had, instead of When You Wish Upon a Star, it had an original piece of music written by Randy Newman.
hmm
And that version of the logo was used in all the Pixar films, um, from Toy Story to Ratatouille up until 2007.
Okay.
Except the exception, was with the Buzz Lightyear Star Command movie. That one just used the default logo, I guess because it wasn't 3D animated.
Right. And it was mostly run by Disney.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
It's
partly
a Pixar
Pixar, but it's
property.
mostly animated and done by Disney.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably why they didn't use that. They figured, well, this is all on the Pixar movies, so we'll just go back to the original variant just to not confuse people,
Mm-hmm.
which it doesn't matter.
But the logo on the version of the movie that we're watching is the 2006 version of the logo, which has uh, since 2006 been slightly modified a few times. It went from originally saying Walt Disney Pictures to just saying Disney, and there's been like little small changes to like the look of the text, and I think they
Hmm.
made like the lighting in the scene brighter, like around the castle and like the river in front of the castle.
Right, yeah.
After that, we move on to the classic Pixar logo, which was not in the original Toy Story.
I do remember that because I remember as soon as the fun little fanfare would finish, it would go straight into the clouds and it would blend into Andy's wallpaper.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my
But
favorite.
I never realized this until I was looking into the Disney logo thing, and I was looking up. There's a video on YouTube of it's the opening of the Toy Story VHS tape, and it shows the Disney logo and like the first couple seconds of the movie, and I was like, wait a second, where's the Pixar logo and Hopping Luxo? Because I never thought about it or realized that the Pixar logo isn't there, and it just goes straight into the movie.
Yeah, and I remember that. I Those are fond memories. Those are really great memories.
I
Now
just felt
everything's
like
ruined by commercialism and having to put your logo in there.
I kind of wish that in modern versions of Toy Story that even if they like kept the modern Disney logo, that they would put that Randy Newman fanfare over it and
Yes.
cut out the Pixar logo, because I really like that flow from
The
that musical
transition.
fanfare into the actual music of the movie.
Yes, that was
It
so
works so
great.
well.
That's why I'm slightly offended with all of the new DVDs. They have the big old Walt Disney thing. They
Mhm.
don't have the fanfare. Goes into
Mhm.
Pixar. 20 minutes later, then you get into the movie.
So speaking of the Pixar logo, according to the Pixar production logo page on Pixar Wiki, the animation on the logo was done by Pete Docter,
Oh, really?
who directed. Well, now he's the chief creative officer of Pixar. He directed Soul and Monsters Inc. and Inside Out. And he was an animator on Toy Story and worked on the story and all kinds of things. But he animated the Pixar logo.
Hmm. I never knew that. I'm learning so much today.
Yes, and apparently that information, according to Pixar Wiki, apparently that information came from a tweet from Lee Unkrich from a few years ago.
Oh, that's interesting. You know, I keep telling myself to just hop on Twitter and follow all these fun Pixar people. Do I do it? No, because I forget.
So now we get into the actual movie finally, not just the
Yay!
opening logos. We start on the classic clouds, and it pans down over a bunch of buildings that Andy has made out of cardboard, and it stops on a wanted poster of One-Eyed Bart drawn by Andy that says $50 bazillion reward.
That's always been my favorite. That he is such an artist, and you can tell it's drawn by a child. It's just so not anatomically correct. It's all scribbly. It's in crayon. He doesn't
Yes.
spell bazillion right. And
The
that's just,
D in wanted is back, or no, wait, I was gonna say the D is backwards, but it's not. Never mind.
isn't it the N? I think there's a backwards letter.
I don't see any. but he's missing the I in or the first I in bazillion.
Yes, he
And the S
misspells
only has
bazillion.
one line through it.
Oh gosh, that's the way I do my S's. But I do like that's one thing. I think that's what sparked my desire to draw was seeing all of his drawings,
Oh, yeah.
and I just went crazy after that. Well, maybe not. I believe that I started drawing around 3, somewhere around there, just scribbling the most wonderful scribbles I could possibly scribble.
He's got so many of these, like, buildings made out of cardboard boxes that he's drawn on, which is so creative.
I know. I
Like, I
used to
love that.
love boxes. I still love boxes, but I was never that creative. I would just get a cardboard box. I'm like, okay, this is the house. I would never draw on it. As much as I claim to love drawing, I never drew on it, and there was the box. I was using my imagination.
I mean, that's what counts, as long as you're using your imagination.
This is true.
So then Mr. Potato Head as One-Eyed Bart appears. He is the first toy that appears in this movie.
You know, my favorite, and I still say it. I say it to my dogs. Whenever I walk into the room, they're just laying there. I yell, "All right, everybody, this is a stick up. Don't anybody move." And the dogs just look at me like, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong with you?"
I think that line might be the most aggressive and loud opening line of any movie ever.
I think so. I mean, coming from a child, projecting it through a potato, that's pretty aggressive.
I like that Mr. Potato Head also has, like, I guess it's a water gun or something
Yes,
like
just
taped
taped
to
to
his
his
hand.
hand. Oh my gosh, that's always been my favorite. I remember I used to have a Mr. Potato Head, and I would try to tape stuff onto his hands. It was a lot harder than what the movie made it look.
Mm-hmm.
A little offended at that. I'm a little offended that cartoons and animated movies just they give us very high expectations, and when it doesn't happen, you're just the most disappointed child on earth.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. Because now that I'm thinking about it and looking at it, because I've got the clip pulled up here. Like, there's no way that his arm would be able to stay on with the weight of that gun taped onto his hand.
I'm telling you, it's an impossible expectation.
I feel like we're gonna be seeing a lot of that kind of stuff in this movie. Toys
Yes.
doing things they shouldn't be able to do.
I mean, they're coming to life for crying out loud.
That's true. Maybe we can't be too picky about that stuff.
I think as adults, we notice it now, but as children, it's just the most wonderful thing in the world. It's exciting, it's new. You're like, he's playing the way I'm playing, and
Mhm.
this just makes it so much greater. You try to replicate it at home, you get greatly disappointed in the failed taped attempt, and you're Mr. Potato Head.
Mhm.
And now, as an adult, I see why. Just defies the laws of physics.
After he says, "All right, this is a stick up, don't anybody move." It cuts to a shot of the robot toy, Rocky Gibraltar, the troll doll, a bunch of little tykes, and Bo Peep, and all the ones that can have their hands up have their hands up in the air. But like the troll doll's arms are stuck down and the little tykes don't have any arms.
He should have put pipe cleaners on them. Little pipe cleaner hands.
But I had never really noticed that gag before until starting to go through this clip. It never occurred to me that like they all had their arms up because he was robbing them. And they're all standing in front of Andy's cardboard bank that he's made. And then on the left, next to the bank, is the general store, except it's spelled General.
General store.
Yes.
I mean, at least he's
So,
trying.
yeah. I mean, spelling is hard for like a however old Andy is, like 6 or 7, something like that.
I believe he's 6 going on 7.
That makes
I
sense.
mean, spelling's hard for a lot of adults nowadays too. So he's doing a whole lot better than a lot of adults today. I'm proud of him.
Let's see. I wanted to talk about a little bit about the actual history behind a few of these toys. First of all, Rocky. So Rocky his full name is Rocky Gibraltar. He is a figure of a former heavyweight wrestler, and according to the Pixar Wiki page about him, he is probably based on the collectible wrestling superstars figures made by Hasbro. He doesn't talk in the movies at all, but he actually does have lines in the Toy Story animated storybook, apparently, the computer game, which I
Oh,
have. In fact, it's sitting next to me on my shelf here, but I've never actually played it. I've just watched walkthroughs of it because I can't figure out how to emulate it on my computer.
oh no, that's sad. If you ever figure it out, we can do. Well, no, that wouldn't work. We're too far away from each other for us to do a commentary on it because I wouldn't be able to see it. I'd just be able to hear it.
Unless we did like a screen share thing or
Oh, we
something,
could
because
do that.
it's one where it's not so much a game as it is like one of those storybooks that you like click
Oh, the
on stuff and it
interactive
does
storybooks.
things.
I remember those. Those were a lot of fun. I used to have a Lion King one, and I think my cousin had another one. I don't remember which one she had, but we would always trade back and forth and play each other's games. So that was fun.
Next, I wanted to talk about the troll doll
That
with his
lovely little
pink
troll
hair.
doll. Love that little guy.
He's like wearing a bikini of some kind. I don't know what that's about.
Maybe it's a girl troll.
It could be, but don't they all kind of dress like that?
I think so. I don't know. I haven't had a troll in years.
I have no idea. I looked it up on Wikipedia, and Wikipedia says that the dolls were first created in 1959 and became one of the United States' biggest toy fads in the early 60s. And this is they became briefly popular again during the 1970s through the 80s and were copied by several manufacturers under different names. During the 1990s, several video games and a video show were created based on troll dolls. In 2003, the Dam Company restored the United States copyright for this brand, stopping unlicensed production. In 2005, the Dam Company modernized the brand under the name Trolls with a Z, but it failed in the marketplace. In 2013, the brand was bought by DreamWorks Animation with an animated feature film called Trolls being released in 2016 and a sequel released in 2020. I haven't seen either of those movies.
I saw the second one, the the World Tour one, whatever it's called. I really like that
That
one. That
sounds
one was cute.
familiar.
And their Christmas special. Oh man, that one's one of my favorite things to watch every Christmas.
That's funny.
It's just so great. I'm like, man, I still haven't watched the first one. Everybody tells me to watch the first one. I'm like, oh, I'll get to it eventually. I'm busy watching my Christmas special.
Yeah, I've never had a troll doll. Um, I don't think. Maybe I did, I don't remember, but I remember like friends having them and I always thought they looked a little bit creepy.
They are a little creepy, but then they grow on you. For me, I didn't have one particularly purchased for me, but my sister had her old troll dolls. So when I was younger, I would play with her hand me down trolls, and they already had like matted, wonky hair, and just played with those guys.
They needed Buzz to come brush them
Yes,
out.
they needed
Like
Buzz.
in that one scene.
We will get to that soon enough.
Yes. Let's see. The next one would be the Little Tykes, which I about lost my mind trying to find anything about these because I always thought they were like an older version of Little People. I didn't realize they were a totally separate thing from Little People. And so I was Googling about the history of the Little People toys and was like, it was like looking at different things like, oh, the evolution of the designs of Little People. And I was like, am I going crazy? Where this design from the Toy Story movies is not showing up in anything I'm seeing about Little People. And I don't remember how but I finally realized that it was a totally different toy.
I used to have little tykes. When I was little, I used to have a circus or like a carnival playset, and it had a little roller coaster, it had a little Ferris wheel,
That's
and it
so
had the
cute.
little tykes. They're like little egg shaped dudes, and you just put them in there and they'd go around. It was really cute.
I had some too, and I had one. Um, I think we had a school bus
Hmm.
that went with them, and maybe an airplane
Well, that's
too.
cute.
That might have been a Little People thing. But I
Maybe.
think but I think because I also had a lot of Little People, that was where the confusion came from because I always thought they were just Little People.
That is too funny. No, I specifically remember the little tykes because I had that set, and that was my favorite thing to play with when I was little. And I
Mm.
remember specifically those little egg shaped people because I had one that was so cute. He had a little mustache. I loved him to
Oh.
death because I was like, he looks like my dad.
So, according to Pixar Wiki, the real life Toddle Tots line was first introduced in the late 80s by Little Tykes. The fire truck was introduced in 1986, though the model used as the basis for the films was a revision from 1988, which substituted the original blue uniform firefighters for ones clad in black. The set came with 5 figures, 4 firefighters, and a dog not seen in the films. The rest of the tykes were not based in real life toys, with the exception of the sailor tyke, which is a different color. And it's got, at least in this shot, you can see there's a couple of fireman ones. There's one that's wearing a giant cowboy hat. There's one in a doctor outfit with like the little doctor headband. There's one that's wearing like a blue baseball hat, and then another that's wearing like a green, like one of those winter hats with like the ear flaps on the
Oh,
side.
yeah.
And then there are a couple more in the shot, but they're like kind of hidden behind other toys and you can't really see them.
They're really
And then
cute. I like those guys.
they're so cute. I love their little, it's not in this clip, but I love their little fire truck.
Their fire truck is adorable, and I love that they all just get on top of it and drive away.
Yeah. So the last toy is the robot, but he's not specifically based on any toy that I know of. He's just kind of like those like educational electronic toys that were especially popular like when I was a kid in the
Hmm.
90s. So I feel like I had something kind of like him.
Right. I remember having stuff like that too. I really don't think he was based on anything specific. I
No,
don't remember ever seeing a specific toy of him. So I
other
really
than
do think
ones
it was
made like
just,
as merchandise for the movie.
yeah, I think that's the only thing that I've seen if I've ever seen one. But previously, I don't think I've ever seen a little robot like him.
Yeah, he's got like a square, or I guess it's a square on its side on his chest, and then the square has like an arrow going up and an arrow going down.
Mm-hmm.
and then he's got uh treads that he wheels around on, and one of them looks like has letters on the tread and the other has numbers. He's
I
pretty
think
cute.
he is very cute. I think I've seen maybe one toy similar to that, like with the little treads, but I don't think it was a robot. I want to say it was like not even a tank. It was just like a little car, but it had those wheels. And on the wheels, it
Yeah.
had the little imprint. I think it was a Play Doh something because I remember Play
Mm.
Doh would come out with a lot of stuff like that so that you could play with the Play Doh like that. And that may be where I've seen something similar to that. So probably he's just like a conglomerate of a bunch of toys and like, we're just going to stuff it on this robot.
You know what? Now that I think about it, he kind of reminds me of Wally.
He does. Oh, he's cute. I like him.
He's got the treads on his wheels. He's got like kind of a like a square shaped body,
Hmm.
and he's got these little short clamper arms.
He's like the primordial Wally. He's the
The
ancestor.
primordial Wally.
I
That's
mean, that
pretty
could be
funny.
considered an Easter egg. It's like, hey, we're going to make a Wally movie in like 10 years.
Yeah, did you know that the robot from Toy Story is an early version of Wally? That's the rumor that we're gonna start now.
Yes, we shall start this. And you heard it here first, folks. It's Primordial Wally.
Let's see, what is next? I love the line. I love the line, "Ooh, hoo, hoo, money, money, money."
Yes. When I first got paid, I said that to myself in my head. When I saw it in my bank account, I was like, ooh, money, money, money.
And I noticed that, whenever, like, Andy talks for Bo, like, has her talk and does, like, "Stop it, you mean old potato," with whatever she says,
Uh huh.
like, the strings in the background, like, start to sound like, higher and more, suspenseful is not the right word, but it's, like, more dramatic, I guess.
Hmm.
It's, like, kinda mirrors, like, what, like, the emotions that Andy is giving her in the moment, which is I thought was kinda neat.
That is cute. That he's. It's funny because he makes her a damsel in distress, but she's very much not a damsel in distress as her
Yeah.
toy self. She's very independent. She's very knows what she wants.
Yeah.
She's basically a girl boss.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like she kinda gets the short end of the stick in the first 2 movies because they don't really let her do much, and, like, the excuse is kinda that, "Oh, she's porcelain, she would break, so she can't go rescue Woody or whatever, she's just kinda stuck there," but I don't know. I'm just I don't know. I don't I don't love what they did with her in the first couple of movies, but she's still a great character.
Oh
I feel
yeah,
like she got her justice finally in Toy Story 4.
I think so. I really like Bo. Like when I first saw the movie, I was like, hey. There's a girl character. You know, all the little girls always want a girl character. So when you see her, you're just like, yep, that's my girl right there. And then they got rid of her in Toy Story 3, and you're just like, what's going on?
But I'm sure we'll talk about that more when we get to Toy Story 4.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. So then Andy has Potato Head kiss the money on the floor that he's like taken out of Ham and he goes, ooh, 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 money, money, money. And then he shows he says, quiet Bo Peep or your sheep will get run over, and it cuts to the sheep on the orange Hot Wheels track.
I love that because at the time, my cousin had an obsession with Hot Wheels, and she didn't like to talk about it too much because kids at her school would make fun of her because she's a girl and she likes Hot Wheels. So whenever she'd come to my house, she'd set up all, I don't know why her parents allowed her to bring all 87 parts of her Hot Wheels like setup, but they would. And she'd set it up and it had the little swirly ramp thing, and that's what it would remind me of.
Yeah, my brothers all had a lot of Hot Wheels. I don't remember if we had a track like this, but even though I didn't have any of my own, I don't think, I played with theirs like all the time.
Hmm.
I always really liked Hot Wheels.
I did too. I mean, I don't know why. Back in the 90s, they were like, oh, this is a boy's toy.
Mhm.
And, Barbies are girls' toys. I'm like, I have Barbies and I have Hot Wheels. And I stuffed my Barbies in. It was a little, my brother had a bunch of Ninja Turtles and he had their van. And I would always steal
Mhm.
his van and I would put my Barbies in there to go to the mall because what better thing does Barbie do but go shopping in a Ninja Turtles van?
So in the background of this same shot, with the sheep on the Hot Wheels track, you can see Andy's shelf where he has like all of his games and his books, and a lot of those are references. Either the books are references to Pixar shorts and stuff like that, and the games are like actual real games.
Hmm.
I feel like we should probably wait to talk about those until the staff meeting scene, because that's where you can see it really up
See everything
close.
clearly, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's also a bunch of alphabet blocks back there, and I tried the letters that are showing are U, S, S, G, and Q, and then there's a couple. Well, I think there's an O at the bottom. It's either an O or a C that's like partly marked, partly hidden by the sheep, and then
Hmm.
maybe a K, but most of it's hidden, so I don't really know. I tried to figure out if those were just random letters or like a reference to something, because that seemed like the
Ooh.
kind of thing where they would hide some kind of
Yeah, that does
reference.
sound like maybe like people's last names than just like the first letter of their last names, but they
I
would have
don't
had
know.
more letters, I think.
Yeah, I guess if anyone knows if those are referencing something, send us an email.
Yes, please let us know because we will be racking our brains after this.
Yes. Let's see. So Woody appears over the horizon on the bed. And I just want to this is Woody's first appearance in the movie, and it's a big moment, but I just want to talk about the drawing, Andy's drawing of Woody in the background of this shot.
I love his drawings so much.
Do you know what drawing I'm talking about?
Yes, and it's fantastic.
There's a drawing of Woody where he's got a gun and he's blowing off the top of the barrel, and then in the corner of the drawing you see a pair of boots laying on the ground, like he has just shot somebody.
Oh my gosh. When I first noticed that, like I never noticed that as a kid, but like when you're watching it later as like an older teen and even as an adult, you're just like, "Oh my gosh, what is Andy drawing?"
Like that's kind of dark for a 7-year-old.
I know, but I mean, at least he's being imaginative. I wonder if he ever watched like Western shows. Like maybe he watched Woody's Roundup or maybe like whatever, in their universe Western shows were. Like maybe he was just a little
Hmm.
cowboy kid. He really liked it.
I feel like though if he had watched Woody's Roundup, then Woody would have known that he was from Woody's Roundup,
Oh, this is
but he doesn't
true.
know that in the second movie.
This is true. So then he did not watch Woody's Roundup. Then he probably, if, his parents were into Westerns or something, or if, he just was really fascinated by it, like little kids get into little like hyperfixations of what they like. That's probably what happened.
Yeah, my little sister was obsessed with John Wayne for years as a kid. She could watch all of his movies. She just loved John Wayne for some reason.
I
I
mean, I
don't.
don't blame her. John Wayne movies are actually pretty good. I'm not a big Western like movie person, but I've seen a few John Wayne movies and they're not bad.
So I wanted to point out that the music that happens as Woody is coming over the bed to save the day, it's the same theme that plays at the end of Toy Story 4 as they're driving like after he's chosen to stay with Bo. I guess spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen Toy Story 4. After he's chosen to stay with Bo and like the RV, after he said goodbye to everybody and the RV is uh is driving away and they're like looking out over the carnival, it's the same musical theme. So it's kind of like a bookend for a musical bookend
Hmm,
for the four movies.
that's so interesting. I never paid attention to that. I'm very oblivious when things like this happen. I'm not a good trivia person because I'm just so enthralled by the movie and mostly by the artwork that that's what consumes me.
Well, I also noticed it because I'm a music person and I'm obsessed with movie scores, especially Toy Story's movie scores. So I was like, that's the same theme from the beginning of the first movie.
I mean, this is what makes our podcast so great. I'm just
Yes,
oblivious to everything, and you have all the wonderful information.
yes, but I like that it's kind of like in the beginning, it's him like saving Bo, and in the end, it's like they've gone off to be together.
That's so sweet.
So I kind of wanted to, since this is like Woody's introduction, I kind of wanted to read a couple of things, or at least talk about a couple of things from that same book, the art and making of the animated feature, talking about Woody's background and his history a little bit. So actually, at first, Woody was not planned to be the lead character of Toy Story, but he was going to be the sidekick of Tinny, the tin toy from the short film Tin Toy,
Hmm.
who was originally the main character. And as the story began to evolve, like they realized that like Tinny wouldn't work as the main character because there was he seemed like too old and like too much of an antique for him to be like Andy's favorite toy. So they decided to make Woody the main character instead and got rid of Tinny.
Poor Tinny. I feel kind of bad that they did that though. Because he
Yeah.
was cute. I get where they're coming from. I get that he's not a type of toy that would be cherished for forever.
Mhm.
Dolls and ragdolls and action figures are a little more along the lines of something a kid will play with and probably even carry into adulthood as like a trinket or like a memento of their childhood. I still have stuffed animals from when I was a child, and I'm probably going to be buried with these stuffed animals because I love them so much. But yeah, if it was a little tin wind up toy, I really don't think that would last very long. Also, because they rust, they get kind
Mhm.
of grody after a few years. So I really feel like they went with the right decision to make a rag doll the main focus of the movie and not a little tin figure.
Yes. So Woody was actually originally supposed to be sort of a ventriloquist dummy, sort of like a Charlie McCarthy type dummy who used to be owned by Andy's dad, but then when they decided to make Buzz a space toy, they thought it would be better to change him into a cowboy. And it says, since it was a buddy picture, we wanted the dummy to be the complete opposite of a space toy, so we made him a cowboy. Both genres complemented one another because each dealt with conquering some type of untamed frontier, which I thought was a really interesting quote. and just like a really interesting contrast between the two of them that I'd never thought about before.
I never thought about that either. That is really interesting because you don't think of that. They do both have uncharted frontiers,
Mhm.
and both of them are pretty much like explorers. So that is a really nice compliment to each other. And they also have very nice contrasts that one is in the past, one is going towards the future. But even with that, there's certain things about them that are very similar. And I do like that they chose those two genres of toys to, complement each other.
Yeah. There was another quote from this book that was about Woody. This is from Pete Docter. He said, on the surface, Woody's very loose, very relaxed about everything. He sees himself as Mr. Nice Guy, but underneath he's thinking, who's my competition and what do I have to do to stay on top?"
And this really fits in with his snarky attitude.
Yeah.
He is the biggest jerk in the
Yeah.
movie, but he's a lovable jerk.
Yeah. Like for the most part, all the other toys seem to really like him.
I feel like he's one of those people that, they'll do whatever they can to get certain people out of the way, but they do it in such a way that it's like nobody suspects them of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Except when he does push Buzz out of the window, everybody suspects it.
I feel like he's also the type of person who will say things, and at least in the first couple of movies, he'll say things without like really considering how they might make other people feel.
This is true.
And it may not necessarily be that he doesn't care, he just doesn't think about it.
Right, because in the first movie, I feel like he's more self absorbed
Mhm.
than, of course, when he's in Toy Story 4, which a lot of people were saying that his decision was very self absorbed, but I feel like he's the most selfless at that point.
Mhm.
And he's finally, given everything he could possibly give to all the toys and help them as much as he could. And it's finally his turn, and he can finally do what he wants to do. Because the whole
Right.
time, even in the first movie, he's doing stuff for the benefit of the other toys.
Even if, like, in the beginning, he's, like, still kind of a selfish jerk, like, he's also, like, a good leader to the rest of the toys, and, like, everyone seems to like him, maybe not Potato Head, but everyone
Mr.
else.
Potato Head can see through his facade. He knows who he is because Mr. Potato Head is a jerk too.
Yeah, but getting back to this scene,
We just totally went off.
yeah, I might end up editing some of this out because 'cause we've been going for an hour and 20
Oh
minutes,
my god, yeah, for
and
sure we could not have done 2 episodes.
we still have 30 seconds left to talk about. What is uh I have to listen to this clip from the movie because I'm trying to remember what the pull string saying is that he
Oh,
says when
he
Andy pulls
first
a
says
string.
reach for the sky?
Oh, okay.
That's what he says. He says reach for the sky.
That's right. Because I was thinking about that, and I like when I think of like Woody's first line in the movie, I think of "Pull my string, the birthday party is today." But
Uh-huh.
like, does this technically count as Woody's first line, even though
Um,
it's his pull string?
I don't know. Technically, you would think it's his first line because it's still Tom Hanks' voice,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not technically his first line as a toy coming to life.
Mm-hmm.
How dare you do this to me? I'm going to be thinking about this all night.
Yeah, that just occurred to me while I was watching it. I was like, wait, he says something before he says the pull my string line.
Yeah, and it's his literal pull string that was pulled.
Yeah,
But if you think about it, it technically isn't his first line because first lines come out of your mouth that's moving, not a pull string.
I guess.
So he has two first lines.
But I love the shot where he's saying reach for the sky and then like
How
it
they're kind
goes
of like
over.
slowly zooming out of his face.
Yeah, it comes down over the top of his hat. Like he's an actual sheriff in like some western movie and it's this dramatic shot.
Right? I know. I like that too. It's super appropriate for the whole like playtime that's going on to make it feel like you're actually watching a scene in a western movie. And I
Mhm.
like that they did that because as as you're looking at western movies, they do stuff like that. Like they do like really close up shots of the face and they do like, the dramatic film angles of the time, and you see some of that in Andy's playtime. And I really like that they put that into consideration because it makes it feel more like you're being absorbed by Andy's playtime.
Mhm. I really like the I think it's funny the voice that Andy does for Woody. I'm here to stop you, one-eyed Bart.
He's trying to be all like a grown up sounding voice, but it doesn't sound grown up because he's six.
It almost sounds like some kind of like a kid's idea of like a superhero voice.
Yes.
Like, I'm here to stop you.
I love that. I love that he gives his characters different voices instead of just one, like his voice. He
Mhm.
does actually get into character with his characters and he actually goes all out for playtime.
Yeah, I used to do that too. I used to do a lot of different voices for my toys.
I used to do that too. I used to get into character with my little stuffed animals, and I think a lot of kids did that. I think that's why it's just so fluid in the movie because every little kid is like, "Oh yeah, I do that too. That's normal."
Mhm. And then Andy, uh, Woody says, "I'm here to stop you, one-eyed Bart," and then Andy pops one of
His
Potato
little
Head's
eyeball
eyes
out.
off, and he says, "Don't! How did you know it was me?"
I love that because it's like, was it a glass eye? Like in the universe
Oh,
that Andy is creating, is one eye
I
Bart
guess
like,
so.
does he not have an eye? Is it an eye patch? Is it like a sticker on his eye, a glass eye? I need to know these things.
Well, in the opening of Toy Story 3, when he's playing One-Eyed Bart, and they're doing basically this scene with like some different stuff in it, he has an eye patch,
Yeah, he does.
and so does I think Mrs. Potato Head.
Yes, she does too. I love Mrs. Potato Head. I can't wait till she's actually on screen in Toy Story 2.
I can't wait for all the characters that we have to wait to talk about until Toy Story 2.
I know, there's so many good characters. Like, this franchise has just made so many good characters throughout all of the movies, and there's not really a character that I don't like.
Mhm. He says, "Don't, how did you know it was me?" And then Woody says, "Are you gonna come quietly?" And Potato Head or One Eyed Bart says, "You can't touch me, Sheriff. I've got my attack dog with a built in force field."
I too wish for an attack dog with a built-in force field.
Which that's such a kid thing too to come up with, even though it's like this Western scene, an attack dog with a force field doesn't make any sense, but it's just his imagination.
Yes, and then Woody's like, "Well, I brought my dinosaur. Who eats force field dogs?"
I wanted to point out though, if you look closely at Slinky's like frozen toy face,
Mm-hmm.
when he's the attack dog. Like, it looks weird. It doesn't look like how he normally looks when his face is still. Like,
I don't like that.
I feel like his eyelids are maybe lower. I'd have to, like, find a shot of another time where he's in toy mode to compare, but, like, it seems like his eyelids are lower and he's not smiling, like, his mouth is just straight.
See, that's okay. So I don't like that they do that. It makes me so angry because it's like, are these toys forgetting what they look like?
Or is it just I mean, I have
Or
to
is it
assume it's just an
just,
animation error, or, like, they just figured or they just at one point, like, decided to change
or
his
maybe they
face.
think it's an Easter egg and Pixar is like, haha, nobody will ever notice this. And I'm over here just racking my brain over why a toy would change his face and Andy not notice. That makes me very concerned.
And then Woody brings out Rex, his attack dinosaur, who defeats Slinky, the force field dog, and then Andy puts a one-eyed Bart in jail, which is just Molly's crib with a paper that has the word jail in it, like written in crayon
I like how she's in
on the
jail
front.
too. I like how he just doesn't consider, like, oh, my sister's in jail. Or maybe she's the guard. Maybe he thought like she can be the guard for the
he
jail.
also he also doesn't consider how bad of an idea it could be to put a Mr. Potato Head with all of his little pieces
With
into a
his
baby's
baby
crib.
sister, and she's over here just gnawing at his eyeball, and she could have swallowed it. This could have been the worst birthday ever.
I
Molly would
mean,
have
it
been
says
rushed to the
on his box
hospital.
ages 2 and up. He's not supposed
See,
to be babysitting Princess Drool.
he's not really, because that is a choking hazard.
Yes. So we end this clip with Molly picking up Mr. Potato Head, and she has just started to bring him up to her mouth. Her mouth is wide open, and she's about to put him in her mouth and then hit him on the railing of her crib. And that's where we end the first 2 minutes of this movie.
You know, I feel really bad for Mr. Potato Head. That's just a
He goes
horrible way to
through so
go. He
much in these
does.
movies.
He goes through, I think, the most. And I think they did it specifically for comedic relief because
Mhm.
he is a very grouchy man. And seeing very grouchy men go through very horrible situations is just comedy. It's comedy gold. But I do feel really bad for Mr. Potato Head.
There's a couple of deleted alternate openings to the movie.
Hmm.
One is the original opening of the movie. It was going to be a scene from the Buzz Lightyear cartoon that the Toy of Buzz was based off of. And it was going to have Zurg, but he's a totally different like design of Zurg and voice from Toy Story 2, and it was going to have Buzz defeating Zurg, and then it would cut to um it would pan out and you'd see the TV and Andy saying, "Wow, what a cool show." And it shows like Woody sitting there, and then I think the song starts, "You've Got a Friend in Me." And then once they decided that they wanted to open the movie um with Andy and Woody instead, they had a different opening where it was like Andy playing out like a shootout between him and Woody, where Woody's the sheriff and Andy, I guess, was playing the bad guy, and
Hmm.
he pretends that like Woody like is shooting him,
Oh,
or like
gosh.
um they do that thing where it's like in Western movies where it's like they stand like a certain amount of paces from
Oh,
each
yeah.
other and then shoot, and then like Andy pretends to fall over from being shot, and he accidentally knocks a vase off of a table or something and doesn't see it. And Woody, and it shows Woody like looking, like his eyes are like just darting back and forth, like trying to decide, or like making sure that the like watching the vase about to fall. And then when it finally falls, he catches it. He like jumps in and catches it real quick, and then right before Andy turns around, he goes back to his toy frozen mode.
That's interesting. I think they made the best decision in the whole
Mm-hmm.
what they chose, because those two, like, they're good concepts, but they don't set the scene or the mood of the scene and like the basis of the movie. Like, yeah, those could be like parts of the movie, but that wouldn't like set the mood of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the version that they ended up with is a much better opening, and um it sort of sets the stage for like the kind of movie it is.
Hmm. I totally agree with that, because I'm trying to think, like, where would you go from the point of, Woody watching the show to
Mm-hmm.
the rest of the movie, and then how would you go from Andy having a shootout with Woody and then the base falling? I mean, that one makes a little more sense because it's like you get to
Mm-hmm.
see Woody come to life, and
Yeah.
he's trying to do it without Andy noticing, but that seems more like just a scene of the movie than it does like the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, and I feel like with the first one, having Buzz introduced like straight away first thing in the movie doesn't work as well as it does as having his reveal later on when Woody goes up and peeks up onto the bed and sees him there.
Yeah, I feel like a build up for that makes it a lot better than to just be like, oh yeah, this is the other character.
Yeah, because there's like this whole, for the minutes leading up to it, there's like this whole mystery of like, what is this gift that Andy's just gotten? What is this toy? And
Hmm.
then he's revealed.
It creates
And
a
I
slight
also,
suspense.
yeah, and I also feel like having in the second version, having him come to life like earlier in the movie, kind of make would have made it feel like a little less magical, like when he fully comes to life later.
Hmm.
Because in the version of the movie that we got, we see him for like the first 5 minutes or so, just as Andy's toy, like frozen, and then when Andy leaves the room, like he moves suddenly under, and you're like, oh,
He is alive.
pull my string, the birthday party's today.
I think they did a really good job. Like, they kept it until like the most perfect time. I feel like after the credits and everything, that was the perfect time to have him come to life.
I agree. So I guess before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to say about this clip that we watched, about these first 2 minutes?
No, I think
Any closing comments?
we really touched on a lot of stuff in like the minute and 10 seconds that was actually shown of the movie. We even touched on a lot of stuff about the logos. So I think we did pretty good for
Yeah.
our first episode, our first official episode of the movie, because, the first actual episode, our pilot, is just our introduction. So actually getting into the movie today was pretty great, and I feel like we touched on a lot of stuff.
Yes, and we've been going for an hour and 40 minutes now, so I'm going to have a lot
You have a
to
lot of
edit
work to do
down.
now.
So I think it's time to wrap it up. So I guess I will just say Thanks for listening, everybody, and be sure to follow all of our social media accounts and send us an email if you have any thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns. You can send the email to 2minutesandbeyond@gmail.com. And if you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. See you next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Don't miss me.